Kevin here, Mr. DIY Dork from DIYDork.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really cool, simple set of table legs that has kind of this funky geometric style to them. So check it out, it's a really cool project. Alright, so you may recognize this table from a few videos back when I was doing a tabletop rescue. I had found a coffee table, I think it was at Goodwill, for $10, and it was pretty rough, but I knew it had, decent bones, and I was going to redo it. Well, I ended up peeling off the top and covering it in these reclaimed wood slats that I had left over from my library table makeover, and I'll link to that video if you want to check it out. And anyway, when I was cleaning it up, cleaning the edges up to straighten, to make everything cut even and level, I screwed up. So I ended up having to make a totally new base, and that's what my last video was about. So I'll link to it too if you want to check it out. All right, so I was done with the video, and I was looking at this thing, and I had painted the original legs this dark gray, and it looked pretty good, but I just never was quite into the look. It's kind of cheap particle board legs and then a really cool top. I felt that it deserved better handmade legs, so what I decided to do was split this into two tables and sell them both, and then make kind of a simpler tabletop for the original table I'd built, and then take this top and make really cool legs for this video. So let me show you what I ended up doing. Alright, so here's what I did. I just completely removed the tabletop and I built this tabletop for the original coffee table. And I think it fits the styling of the legs a little better. They're just kind of cheap particle board legs that I'd painted up. So I just made a top out of scraps. These are leftover 1x4s from our house renovation when we were doing all the trim in the house. Like around all the floors and around the posts and everything, we used 1x4s. Had a whole bunch of these little short pieces left over, so I kind of did this offset brick pattern. And then what I did was I lightly stained most of them, and then a few of them I just left raw. And then I coated everything in clear lacquer, and it turned out great. Really nice and smooth, and great color on it. And I actually have someone that's supposed to be coming and buying it this week. So I can sell off this table, and then the tabletop that I put a ton of effort into, and I just really like the look of it. I think it deserved a little bit better handmade legs. Kind of give it, the top has kind of a modern funky style, a little bit of that reclaimed look. So I think I'm going to do the same thing with the legs and use some leftover 2x4s we have outside that used to be window trim on our house before we redid the exterior and metal siding. And anyway, I'm going to build the table legs out of that and give it kind of a funky look. So anyway, let's start making them. Alright, so here's what I'm using to make the table legs. And I apologize if there's any wind and there's a lawnmower in the background, but it's been a crazy spring with tons and tons of wind. Alright, so anyway, I'm using these leftover 2x4s. You can see they're not all the same width, so that's okay. What I'm going to do is cut them all down on a table saw, rip them down so they're the same width. And what they are is a bunch of leftover 2x4s that I have here in my junk pile in the back of the house. That's left over from whenever we redid the windows. This used to be trim around the old windows. So I'm going to cut it down on the table saw, and then I'm going to take my miter saw here, and we're going to cut them up, and it'll take a little math, a little figuring, but I'll show you exactly what it makes. So how about I start making this? Alright, so it was getting way too windy outside to even hear what I was saying, so I'm coming in to explain what I'm going to do with the table legs. These are just little sample pieces, but now that I have trimmed the real ones down to the same width, I need to figure out what kind of angle and lengths to cut everything to make what I'm trying to do with these table legs. So I believe what I'm trying to build is a trapezoid. I don't quite remember all my geometry terms, so basically it's like a triangle and the top's cut off, so it's kind of flat. And I need just a little bit of angle, and after testing these pieces I found that about a 10-degree angle is what I want. So you can kind of see when these are together, it just angles in just a little bit. So I'm going to have a base plate, and then a side leg over here. I'll have another one over here, and then also I'm going to have a top plate. Now the top plate will be narrower than the bottom plate because it all angles up. So I've also decided, after measuring the width of this tabletop, that I think an 18-inch base plate, or at least the base of the table legs, would look pretty good. But that also includes these side legs where they're attached on the side. Now since this is 1.5 inches thick, and I know that since it's angle cut it's slightly longer than that, but I'm just going to guesstimate it at 1.5 inches, I need to deduct 3 inches so that I know what length to cut this one. So the bottom edges of this bottom base plate I'm going to cut at 15 inches, and then they will have a 10-degree angle cut. Okay, then the table legs, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to chop the bottom at 10 degrees so that they sit flat. and then I'll be able to screw these together and attach and all that. All right, now for the length of these and for the top plate, I'm gonna leave that for later. What I'm basically gonna do is cut them just like this, except it'll be the full length, it'll be 2 of them. Then I can kind of eyeball how tall I want to make the table legs before I chop them off flush. And you can kind of see when they meet, they're nice and flat so that the tabletop will sit on there. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want my coffee table to end up being about an average height off the floor, which is usually about 16 to 18 inches up. And that includes the tabletop and the thickness of the tabletop. So since it's close to about 1.5 to 2 inches thick, you know, I got to do a little math and there's the angles and all that, so I think it's easier just to do it by eyeball. So I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna cut a base plate and these, and then I'll bring it back in and I'll show you how I figure out how to cut the top. Right, now if what I just did out there didn't quite make sense to you, what I did was I cut the bottom 10-degree angle and then I put it up against my base plate. All right, then I measured from this corner just straight, not at this angle, but just straight, about 16 inches, because I think that, like I said, 16 to 18 inches is how tall I want the table. Then I come down a little bit and I figured that I could actually measure this board at about 15 or 15.5 inches and then just chop it there. So I just went with 15.5 inches just to give it that little bit extra height. So I measured from this bottom corner all the way up and I made a tick mark at 15.5 inches. Then I brought that tick mark over to this side so that I could actually see what I'm doing. And then I just grabbed one of my other boards that I already cut at this 10-degree angle and then I just lined it up to that tick mark and I drew the line. And then that way I was able to cut exactly where I needed it, and I was able to get pieces like this. You can see it's angled this way down at the bottom, and then at the top it's angled the same way. So now whenever we put all these together, it looks something like this. Alright, so this is the finished sizes of the base and the legs, and now I just have to figure out how long to make the top piece. So I did a little thinking, and this is like the most no-brainer way to do it, but I think it'll work great. So let me show you what I'm going to do. Alright, so here's what I decided to do. Now I'm on the other side, so it looks upside down. And I just placed everything on some scraps that I had cut off outside that are the same height as all the other pieces, so everything is uniform. Alright, then I made sure that the base plate and the bottom of these legs are totally flush and are pushed together so at the correct angle. And then all I did was one of these big long pieces I had left over. I'm just setting it underneath the ends of these legs here. We'll make sure that they are totally flush right here. Alright. Once those are good, all I have to do is take a pencil and mark the insides. Now I can go outside and chop it right on those lines, and I have an upper piece, the base plate, that's going to fit right in. Then I can screw everything together. I'm going to sand it, I'm going to paint it, distress it. I'll show you all that next. Yeah, I got them all cut. It's all good, thumbs up. Now I'm going to go ahead and sand them all because they're a little rough, smooth them out, and then I'll screw them together and then do the distress paint job. Alright, here they are all assembled and screwed together. Turned out really nice. Really strong, stout legs. And a couple things I did that I didn't show is I pre-drilled a couple holes on the top plates here so that I can screw them from underneath to the bottom of the tabletop when I assemble it. And then also I took my orbital sander with 80 grit and I rounded off all the corners so nice and smooth, and I also smooth out the end grain on the cuts here a little better. And getting this thing prepped for paint. So then what I'm going to do next is take it outside, I'm going to spray paint it. It doesn't have to be like a perfect job because we're just going to sand it anyway to give it a distressed look, and then I may go ahead and clear coat over them and then put them on the table. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, so I brought the table legs in. The clear coat is now dry. They're nice and smooth and look really cool. So I did is turned everything upside down, and I measured the center of the legs and made a tiny little tick mark. I doubt you can see it in the video, and I also made one on the table here. Then I just lined them up, and as you can see, I just used 4 screws. I think they're just 2-inch, and I pre-drilled just to make it a little easier, and I'll tighten them down. And that's it. Now I'll flip it over, and I'll show you how it turned out. Alright, and there it is all finished. I think these legs match the styling of the top a lot better with the distressing and just a little bit of that kind of angular modern look to go with the top. Turned out pretty cool. So my little $10 Goodwill investment in that junky old table ended up turning into 2 coffee tables that I'm able to sell, which is pretty cool, and get a little experience from this. So not too bad, not too difficult of a project. Just a little bit of an angle I had to figure out, and then I showed you my super simple way of figuring out how long to cut the legs. But it turned out really awesome. I like it.